Welcome everybody. Awesome, great to see you all here. Today we have a very special guest with us for our presentation. Jean-Sébastien Daigle is coming in from Canada. Jean-Sébastien is one of the premier users of EDGY and probably one of the people in the world that has used it most in practical situations. So it will be really interesting to hear what he has to say about this. And he is one of the designers behind many of the models and designs that we have within the EDGY language. So what he has here is something that is also being worked on behind the scenes with regards to intersection, and gives you a little bit of insight into what is to come. So Jean-Sébastien, over to you. Let's see what you have to offer us today.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I do am one of the first people that we know of that have been using EDGY since the beginning, and we've been using it for, I think it started in 2022, and we've quickly realized how important and powerful it could be in what me and my business partner and friends were doing as facilitator, as consultant, as people that helps businesses, enterprise, and startup figuring out their strategy, what to do, where might be the root cause of some problems. So throughout the first year, we really figured out how powerful and how useful it could be. And at some point, we figured out how a way to use it that is kind of the backbone of our practice. And this is pretty much what I'm going to show you now and today. So these are 7 core maps that we use in most of our project because they are highly structural and they give us the good conversation that should be in pretty much every project. And then there's the N, how to edify your map, because every discipline, every specialty, every enterprise have their own specific things that is needs to be custom, but needs to work with AG. So we're gonna take the next hour to show you what are those map and how we use it. So feel free if you ever have a question. Elgi is going to stop me because I have multiple monitors. I cannot monitor everything, so he'll be helping me for that webinar. So let's start. Let's see if my slide works. Here we go. So just a quick starting point. We often ask ourselves, like, why do project fail, and what leads to failure in most, well, either enterprises, startup businesses. And usually there are multiple reasons why it fails. It's never really a single thing, but sometimes it's the vision, the inefficiency, the execution. Sometimes people put too much feature on their project if it's a digital product and they get overwhelmed, or there are some issues with the UI UX or the positioning, the branding, the brand perspective is not good. So it's a couple of things, a couple of issues. And throughout the last couple of years, I've been able to travel in quite a lot and went into a lot of different events, which sometimes people are specialized in technology architecture or in UX or in strategy or in transformation, whether it's digital or human resources. And in most of these places, people do feel like this is what they're living. Like they feel unheard, no impact, and it's kind of hard for a bit everybody to get to the point where everybody feel that they are succeeding in their context, in their enterprise, and being part of something bigger than themselves. So, jokingly, at some point, while talking with people, we came up with that slightly funny metaphor that I really like. We feel like sometimes enterprises are like Babel's Ivory Jenga tower, so all tower metaphors. Where the Jenga tower, if you don't know what it is, the Jenga is the game where you remove some block, and sometime when you change a block and you need to put it back on top, the tower can fall and then you lose the game. So this is a bit on how sometimes enterprises are fragile on that point. The ivory tower is how people sometimes on top don't listen to the people on the bottom, and they make uninformed, ill-advised decision. And the Babel Tower is a metaphor where it's actually a story where multiple people back in the days wanted to build a big tower to reach the sky in the heavens with the gods. But then the gods say, you're not going to succeed. And they invented different languages. And then they haven't been able to complete the tower because people did not understand one another. And that's the fun thing and good thing about EDGY is that sometimes we say it's kind of like a Rosetta Stone. So it's multiple language synthesized into the facet model that help people understand one another. So that's how we explain some of the things that we try to tackle with EDGY. So if you're new to EDGY, there will be some basic stuff, but yeah. So, and we bought a couple of these Jenga tower. We painted them, and we have a game that we play sometime when we do the workshop to explain how communication and collaboration can help you build that perfect tower. Uh, And this is where sometimes when I talk to people, I do say that people in IT are good at what they do. People in human resources are good at what they do, strategy, UX, design, product, etc. Like people are good, but one of the main problem that we think why we it failed is because you can only be as effective as how you communicate with people, how you understand with one another, and that's the whole Jenga tower metaphor there. Uh, and we also say, yeah, usually people are trying to break these silos and change things to make things more efficient, and they blame kind of the structure, and they want to change everything. But for us, our mindset is not. Let's not try to break these silos. People have been talking about that for years and years, and it's not happening. People structure themselves in smaller team because it's how we work. We cannot be efficient if there's 1,000 people screaming at the same time to try to figure a problem. You need smaller teams. So, but these small teams need to be connected together also. Um, and we've been talking about a lot about enterprise design, and it's something that I think needs to be framed correctly in order to understand what we're doing. Because sometimes we say, yeah, the enterprise, yeah, a big enterprise. Are you designing an enterprise with 50,000 employee, or is it just like a small team, a startup? So it's kind of the same actually. Like these uh, are people that try to do something together. They have asset, they have processes, they deliver an experience, and like these can be what their enterprise can be your teammate, a project, a whole business. And you live in a context where there are all of these other enterprises, business teams that are connected together in some way, shape, or form. And that's pretty abstract. So, enterprise, yeah, can be a project or can be the whole business. So you get to choose your frame when you're doing all these activities. So, EDGY in a nutshell, if you're new, there's the facet model um, where it's divided by the identity. So what's the identity of the enterprise, what is the purpose, and all the big question that is sometimes more on the abstract part. How you organize yourself as teams, silo, horizontal, vertical, many ways to organize your enterprise. The architecture, your processes, your assets, how it works, the product you create, and all of the features of your product, the experience, whether it is from the employees or yeah, your clients or your partner. Is just the experience as a whole and the brand. So um, how do you present yourself and how do people perceive you? And the language part is it's people that want to achieve outcome doing activities with objects at some point. So it's very high level, but it's the in a nutshell part. We'll get into more less abstract stuff soon. Uh, Key benefits of EDGY and the way we work. So if you're familiar with the model, there's the Venn diagram, but at its core, it's a language. And so we started using it on many different ways because you can put it on top of many other either theories, practices, methodologies. So it works with basically anything we tried it so far. So it's good to bridge the silos between the team, align the strategy, make this better decision planning, or just clear actionable insight and planning. Uh, and the AG in a nutshell, like I said, I'm gonna go quick on these parts. So the outcome, the activity, the object, the people. So this video is recorded. So if you ever want to stop by and re-listen and read these, it'll be available. Or we have a beautiful website that Elgi will put on the chat where everything is documented. And there are some Miro board and a lot of tools online. Uh, so I just talked about it without saying showing this one. So the mental model, the group, the architecture, the product, the brand, the identity. And it became clear to us while working that everything is connected and everything is influence everything into when you're trying to change something or build something in your enterprise. So the identity will influence the way you organize yourself, the organization or the people that build the architecture. It creates a product and so on. So keeping that in mind, it's a systemic approach that when you use it correctly and you can see the patterns coming over and over again, it's way it's way faster than it used to be to either create something and to check what could be the impact of what you're doing, or just to figure out a root cause of a problem that you might have in one of these aspects. So how the language is actually divided. So the outcome, the object, the activity is that when you put them into one of these lens, become something with a bit more meaning. So for instance, the outcome is a purpose, a capability, or a task. The activity might be a story, a process, or a journey there. So you'll see in action a little bit later on. Uh, Basically, it's I made that slide because someone asked me, yeah, but how does it work? I mean, there's a lot of way to make it work, but this is one of the easier one if you want just to try it for yourself. Usually, there's the Venn diagram, and in the middle, you write down your shared ambition, your what you're aiming for, what you want. So it does not have to be perfect, just put something in there. Then the next step, you need to figure out who are the right people to achieve that ambition or to inform you about that ambition. And then the Venn diagram, you should go in circle and try to say, okay, you have all these questions about all these identities, so who we are, what we're doing it. Then it's all about the discussion. And yeah, you ask question, and at some point, by talking with people with these different lens, you come up with a shared vision, a shared understanding of the project, and then you can go on and just be better at doing what you do as an expert in your discipline. So the core of what I want to present today is something I've been working on for the past year because I wanted the Venn diagram to go further and to be more on yeah, just how I work. So I needed to standardize a tool, and we came up with the compass and these 7 core maps. And I did the first conference back in Rome last September. So, but if you saw it, Last year, it evolved a bit, and it came up with something way more precise and way more actionable than it was a year ago. And it's still going to evolve, but now it's I've been using it with a couple of clients, and it's already pretty useful and powerful as a tool as it is. So, and it's going to be quick recap of my Rome conference, as I said. So. The way I explained it last year is that I was in Canada. I needed to go to Italy, so that was easy enough. But usually, when you want to go something, there are steps. So yeah, from Canada to take the car, to take a first airplane, then a second airplane, then take the tram or anything, and then you're in Italy, you're in your Airbnb or your hotel, and then done it. 4 easy steps. But it's never really quite like that. So when you're doing all these enterprise design thingy, this analysis, we like to zoom out and see the bigger picture. So uh, I zoomed out a bit too much here. I'm in the universe. I zoomed out all the way back, and then we can say, okay, we're something like we're here. And then you zoom in. Okay, so actually in the universe, on the planet Earth, I just want to go on the other side of that big blue thingy that separates me from Italy. And then, okay, first step, I actually need to go to the airport. So there's that map where I can say, okay, there are multiple options. Some might be faster, longer. So it's a choice. That's a map. Then I know at some point I'll go to airport and I need to switch. So I'm from Canada to international. I will need to figure it out. I never really know what's going to be the gate until I'm there. So yeah. So actually, traveling is place map, place map, place map. So you all have all you always kind of have these different maps in every steps along the way. And I think it reflects how I work and how we work in businesses. We have an ambition, we have a place to go, but we need a couple of map and a couple of ways to move towards that thing, but not a single map can do the trick. And yeah, was it? Yeah. So you don't try random paths to get to Rome. Even if all paths leads to Rome, it's you don't navigate randomly and then you say, "Oh, I'm here." So you actually need to have good maps to get to where you want to go. And this is like I said a bit earlier. It's a good model, but it's on itself you cannot like design everything you want, but it's a good basis. So this is not an enterprise, this is the visual representation of an enterprise, and that's kind of the mindset we have when we work with these all of these maps, is that the values in the conversation and how and what we can figure out as a team. So yeah, the compass, we need to figure out what are when we are mapping, what are the key information, what levels of precision we need. We need to know, figure out where we are and where we want to go. So it's like a real map usually when you're planning to go somewhere. And that's the tool to navigate here. So when we start a project, we have hundreds of questions for sure. And we're not going to answer them all at once. So these are the core questions that I try to say, okay, if I have all these figured out, I think after that, if everybody get the whole like overview of all of these answer, we can move forward and be autonomous. But we need to say, "Hey, okay, this is the map, this is where we're going. Do we understand the same thing?" And then you can move on. Every enterprises gather people with a shared ambition. That shared ambition needs to have a shared language and a shared vision, which is the facet model. That context is made of multiple elements. So usually you have multiple processes. Your user have multiple things to do, multiple tasks uh, throughout, and they go through multiple channels. Uh, all of these things are in relation in some way, shape, or form. And all of these relations are happening throughout a temporal context. So step one, step two, step three. And usually your enterprise have these steps, silos, teams, where activities are divided in order for every teams or silos to be efficient. And this is where usually you try to bridge these silos and make sure when it moves from team and specialization and discipline to one another, this is where you can really start to bridge all these things as a model as you're working on your architecture and what you do. And also you need to figure out what's happening in the outside world. So for me, that's what I call the universe map. So people, your enterprise will be influenced by something, whether it's the weather, laws, the government, or your partner, or your user. But you will also have an impact on the outside world, your user, your partner, maybe the environment. So you need to understand the not only the inside dynamic of your enterprise, but also on the outside. So same places, different maps. So these were the maps. And as I said, we need to figure out like what do we put on these maps. So when I show you all these maps, some were zoomed out, some were zoomed in, because they have different. I don't know how I can say it, but you don't use them the same way. So I'll move forward. The example I'm giving here is a map of Montreal. Let's say you're a tourist and you just want to say, hey, maybe I want some, I don't know, I want some maple syrup or to see Le Stade Olympique, or oh, there are some surfing on the bottom right there that we might go. So these are kind of the high level map that gives you a feel of what is happening in Montreal. But by no mean I can say, okay, it's a landmark. I can go there in that direction. That will be good enough. But there's no way I'm planning the right route to go to the airport with that. It's not meant for that. It's a milestone kind of thing. And then this is where you have your Google map. As you can see, there's a lot of block road in Montreal. There's a lot of places that are, yeah. We are Montreal is known for their construction work and the orange cones a bit everywhere. But this is usually where you validate your option. So if I go there, it'll be faster. Maybe I should not take all the roads that are red because it's going to be slow. So you kind of have your option and your strategy taking place on this is where I want to go and to do your planning stuff. And also, it's also Montreal. And this is the underwater circuit of Montreal. It's not useful for me. It's most likely not useful for you. But there is a couple of experts here and there that these experts, if they haven't mastered that and if they don't understand where how water flows, we're going to run into big troubles. So these are these maps that are meant for experts. And this is mostly the way how I see how I work with those maps. Some people are expert and they start with these big expert maps, and they need to take these maps and to say, okay, this is what I need to bring to a higher level in order to have these conversations, these what should we do? There's a problem there. So they need to take the complexity and just shrink it a bit so it's manageable for their people. And then usually you move to the understand part, where this is where you say, okay, these are the decisions we took, this is why we took them, and then usually it moves in circles like that. Some people start with the expert analysis. Since I am a facilitator, usually I start with the higher ups. So I'm trying to get that vision, and then that vision needs to be validated by experts that have all these complexity issues and try to understand, and then we usually move in a circle like that. So it's trying to connect high level, low level manager in a way that is well, digest for a bit of for everybody. So a couple of rules with that compass is that on the top it should be the minimum amount of information, clearly beautiful, make it simple. In the middle is just enough information so people don't get overwhelmed. And this is where there are, to me, what I think, this is where the strategic thinking and decision making happen, because everybody from their discipline brings just enough information to try to go to solve a problem or to move toward that shared ambition. And on the bottom, the map, it's all the information required to do your job. You do it. There's no limit. If you want to use EDGY, do it. It's going to be great. And if you want to use your sets of tools, it's also great. But you need to be aware that when you work with other people from other discipline, EDGY is the game changer to enable these shared collaboration and make it happen. And it's going to be way easier. Uh, Yeah, and these are, it's kind of a repeat of what I had, but yeah, identify the key people, create the shared understanding, list the element, identify the relationship. I'm gonna show you a bit more stuff in a sec. Yeah. Uh, it's a lot of map, a lot of level, and it never happened, and it will probably never happen that I'll have all of these map filled and used and updated constantly is just not viable. So the question I'm asking and the map I'm doing, I'm prioritizing them based on what I'm trying to achieve and in a given context. So sometimes, like I said, I start with the sea level that have a vision, and sometimes it's about people, the facet model, and the universe map because they want to have understand the feel of the ecosystem and how everything works. But sometimes it's more with the experts and I need to figure out, yeah, on a service blueprint level, how their ERP needs to work based on the import-export with boats and everything. So it's another kind of complexity. But then I can bring back that information on top and like guide a bit everything in all these different, yeah, these different projects where we all want kind of the same thing. We want the enterprise to succeed. So you get to choose which map to use when in which order. There are no given rules for that. So this is how it looks right now on the state. So every map, every level, I try to synthesize and have a single question in order for them to be relevant in their context. And what I'm going to show you is actually where I spent most of my time, or where at least I start my project, is the first line, the abstract and understand. How I start project, how I frame these projects, and how you can go quickly through all these high level, whether even if it's not perfect, but that will give a chance for everybody to understand how they can act on the whole enterprise and yeah, how they are relevant to the ambition. So how do we navigate? Yeah, so the big question is how might we solve that Jenga tower problem to solidify the business strategies, to make these informed decision and to align the strategy and the execution there. I'm going to move. So the first map I am using usually is that your ambition, if you want to manage these conversation and if you want them to be meaningful, like I said at the beginning, you cannot invite 1,000 people to these conversations. So usually there's kind of that sweet spot where it's when you're doing workshops and facilitation, if you want everybody to have enough time to share and to talk, it's about 5 to 7 people. And you need to find out who are these people. It might be and it's not a thing where it's only the C-level. It might be an expert that needs to come to these workshop or meetings in order to understand like how are we going to solve that problem or to align ourselves on that ambition. So, and then this is where I think EDGY is very good as a model or is that it forces you to think like who have that vision, who knows about the purpose. Who knows about the organization and who's in these teams and who knows about the processes? Who has, from their discipline, is have the tendency to think about the user or the employee that is more that have more a bit empathy. So it gives you a framework or a frame where, hey, you can have these different mindsets and disciplines around the table in order to start this conversation. So, and this is a premiere that I'm showing these publicly. So take screenshots or just keep the video and look at the video afterward. But I will be at some point be sharing these templates. So yeah, I start with what's our ambition? What do are going to do to reach that ambition, and what do we have? Who are these people based on these different facets? And this is usually my core group that I'm trying to work with. At some point, I will reach more people, but as a start, 5, 6, 7 people can be good. The second map, it's the facet map. If you're familiar with the model, there are all these elements, 16 elements that are represent on these facet map. But usually what I try to do is I try to have just a quick conversation on the identity, the organization, the architecture to make something that is, okay, if you have a single minute to explain what is the enterprise based on these questions, these facets and intersection, what would it be? We need to understand the experience we try to give, how people perceive us, and how you want to present yourself. Why is it important? What do we have as a asset, tools, processes? So just a quick one-liner. So it sets the table. It frames the thing there. And usually these are the question. Why is it important? So a bit on the emotional part, to make people want that ambition, to understand why they are doing it. Yeah, the product, the service, the enterprise, how you organize. Everything is in there. That first conversation, when everybody agrees, is kind of your shared vision of your project and with the people that you are talking to with. And then that's to me the big thing that I've changed throughout the last year is that usually we started with the simple map, the simple board. Is that usually you create your capability map, your channel list, but they can get very overwhelming for most clients. Okay, let's list. You have Twitter, Facebook, TikTok on your channel. You have these are the list of the product you have. These are the 20, 30, 40 capability map that we have, and these are all the process. And it was a bit overwhelming. So the first level, since based on the rule I give, it's all about the shared understanding. We do an exercise where we try to figure out what is core to the enterprise. So the core reinforcing capabilities that enable or will enable your enterprise, the core offering features of the product. What is the core thing that your user want, and so on. And usually, what I try to do is that I say to people, we need 3 to 5 core of all these elements. So I prioritize the outcome elements, so capabilities, user task, and identity, the purpose, and the intersection, well, the product feature, the brand, and how we organize the teams, the silos, the steps, or whatever. And then I try to say to people what goes on top is the most important and the bottom is the less important. So it's already a conversation on what is core, so we don't get to spend, well, we get to spend more time discussing about what is really important and not try to do too much. And yeah, so it's all about being efficient and try to synthesize everything. When we agreed on these core elements, this is where we move to the relation board. So, like on the first, I show you a Venn diagram that I said that, well, the identity influence the organization build. It's the same thing. So we need to figure out, based on these core elements, how everything is related. So these are of course blank because they are templates, but based on the way I work with these capabilities and the strategy part, I say, well, these core capabilities are the core of what we're doing. They need to be working together. So I try to link these core capabilities, and then usually these capabilities enable a product or a feature. So capability one, product one, feature one, two, etc. These feature usually or product are connected to something a user want to achieve, a user task, a user, a client, or it can also be the employee. And if I succeed with that task, it will influence the brand. So what's part of the brand is going to be influenced. An example I can give is that we have a oh, I'll show it later, but yeah, how does it influence on the brand? You have that brand usually is connected with a purpose that your enterprise have. And that purpose usually is connected to some part of the organization, whether a team, a group, a person that is responsible, accountable for that to happen, that purpose to happen. And then you circle back. People from that organization usually also accountable for capabilities to work correctly. And this is how I get to a point where this is the core of an enterprise, whether it's a big one or a small one. So everything is connected, but I try to don't put too much stuff that it's messy and it cannot be explained in too much time there. Then activity. Um, what I try to do with that map, these core capabilities, user task, everything is going to happen in a time frame. So usually it's step one, step two, step three, or at least this is what we want to figure out. What are these main steps? So I use the three main lens, the identity, the architecture, and the experience to figure out these steps. So the first question I ask is how do we want it to happen? So that's the story of, at first we want our clients to, or employee to, and then, so at the end, etc. So that's the story part on how we want it to unfold. The second, the architecture one, is the processes. So how do we make it? Step one, this is what we do. Step two, this is what we do. Step three, this is what we do. So this is more of the mechanical part. And on the third one, how it happened is the step, well, you say and it's more of my background, I check on the user and yeah, we want it to happen that way and we do that, but actually what user are doing is this and they like it or they don't. And then there are branching paths. So it's more on the observation part of how people react to these things, or at least we try to bridge all those things together and yeah, how do we want it, how do we do it, and how it actually happens. So you can have a little bit of an overview of what's happening and how we want it. So that's basically the discussion, and then you end up with and you try to keep it as simple as possible: a story, processes, and user experience, and then you try to name them by steps. Then at some point with the map system, you can go deeper and to give way more information. I have an example of a more complex blueprints at the end. The Milky Way. So the Milky Way is how the whole enterprise work as teams, silos, and steps. So usually it's your first client contact, how they buy, how you sell, how you promote, how you produce what you are selling, customer services, accounting, and everything, and it goes into a circle like that. So usually it's, yeah, steps, teams, silos, but it's circular, so it goes round because most businesses, they have a starting point, and then they come back and do the same thing over and over again. And it's also a great tool to acknowledge that when you have client services, you need that data to go back to the way you sell. So when you're doing linear, it's not obvious, but when it's circular, you need to bridge the end of the user experience to the beginning of the next user experience. Basically, what I do on these is usually the steps we talked about before help us figure out these steps. And then I focused on I bring back the core task, the core capabilities, and the core purpose. And usually I put the product, the organization, and the brand in there to get a sense of what's the whole experience as an enterprise. And the last map I want to show is the one I call the universe map. So it's how do we get a sense of what's happening on the outside world. And on the left, you put all the things that influence your enterprise. The enterprise is in the middle. And on the right, it's everything you have an impact on. And on the top, it's what you have no control over, let's say the weather, and what you can have some control or some sense of negotiation. So you can negotiate with your partner. So it's a bit on the more control side. So you can get, for instance, it's a quick demo. It's separated on your enterprise, your organization, your partners, user, the user, customer, and committees, your political environment thingy. So the further it is on a ring, the further it is from your enterprise. And let's say, for instance, this simplified one is the government just passed a law that will change the way local supplier will supply the thing you're buying in your enterprise. Let's say it's wood. It will increase the price of wood. So that will I will need to hire an outside worker to help me figure out the price. Will it change the price to the customer? So it's a decision I need to make, but it all started on the left with the government that just passed a sustainable law for instance. And there's a board of director that might influence the enterprise on the decision making. So you kind of try to make that story on what's happening in there. And then that was the last map. But I also said at the beginning, so how do you customize your map? And usually what I do is I try to use these map as a core. But what we figured out throughout the last year and a half or so is that we started putting EDGY on top of everything that we are using when the core of EDGY is not what we need, or just because our clients are more familiar with other technique and methodology. So for instance, this is the value proposition Canva, the classic one where you have the product and the gain creator, pain relief, and the gain, pain, jobs to be done. But when you put EDGY on top, to me, it's actually product and task, which are a similar concept, obviously. And then you have your main product, but the gain creator and the pain reliever are actually features of your product. And on the right, the positive motivation, the gain, and the negative motivator for the pain. These are usually things as a designer that you map what people like, dislike, what it's the thing you studied. Um, and on EDGY, it's actually what I use. It's the same, is that we have that, okay, which products serve which task? Is it okay to have one product with no documented task, multiple product with a single task? So you can just have that conversation. There's no right or wrong, but it's about figuring out these features in this product. What are they useful for and to who and why? A couple of quick example, and this is where we saw with other experts using value proposition, KPR, KR management, Tree Horizon, enterprise portfolio finances. And when you put EDGY on top, this is where with multiple technique map methodology, you figured out that you can see that they are some concepts that are similar in every job. And then, okay, your jobs to be done in the user story and the task is kind of the same. So we don't need to do it 3, 4 times differently. We can just do the same. And you can really bridge these expertise and say, okay, so these are the processes that we are doing, but what you're telling me is the story of how you would like to happen. So it's easier to have this conversation where it's not working, it's working, this is not. You probably have been in a lot of these conversations. So it only opens the lights in there. So quick few example. I have multiple custom Canva that I use Start with Why with Simon Sinek in some workshop. There are these lines where let's talk about the brand personality, the identity. Are we more mass appeal, elite? We do some ecosystem mapping, some partnership pyramid thingy there that a client was using, and it's say, well, it worked with EDGY. And for the simple one, when we say it works with basically anything, people know the SWOT, so strength, weaknesses, threat analysis, threat opportunity. And usually in workshop context, people are just throwing these post-its. This is our strength. This is an opportunity. This is a threat. This is a weaknesses. And we still do these kind of activities. There's a multiple one, but usually when we put NG on top when we do our analysis afterward. It gives meaning and it's easier to analyze what might be the problem, the strength of the opportunities, because you can see on that example, we're good with the purpose and the channel and the content, but our processes and the study we've made with the task and the journey is Um, and people are starting to say on the narrative on the story side that we are a company and the brand is affected. So we have an opportunity to change some capabilities and to build better product or feature. So it's from, yeah, a bunch of things that are kind of, you need to figure out what they really mean to let's put edgy on top and it's easier to get the bigger picture and the story of what is actually happening on the in your enterprise if you're trying to solve problem or to yeah to improve that enterprise. Just for example, a client we had, these are a couple of boards where some of are text-based, some are, Venn diagram, a bunch of purpose stacked together in categories where we figure out how are they connected. Couple of organizational chart. There you go. And what's the relation between these teams, how they work, the top task analysis, personas, and overall, at the end, we do all these boards, but we still use EDGY to figure out which discussion we had on the identity part, which one on the architecture, what do we know, what do we don't know. So it's easy to say to cover, okay, we haven't talked much about the brand and we don't have much about the product at that point, but we know about our user, we know about the identity, we know about the processes, so it's way easier to tackle the other aspect of the enterprise afterward. And I will say thank you. I have a other example and things to show, but it's question time, I guess.
Thank you so much, Jean-Sébastien. There haven't come a lot of questions in the chat. So please, if you have any questions or thoughts, then please bring them forward. But a couple of things from me. Do you see any difference in what map depending on who you're talking to?
I don't know if it's the people I'm talking to or if it's me, because EDGY is multidisciplinary, and I am very familiar with the service blueprint maps. So to me, it's a given that at some point I will do service blueprints. But I'd say to me, the level are more important for me than the I don't know, it's more relevant the level on which I work because I do workshop and facilitation. So for me, the first layer that I showed you is where I spent most of my time. And then the map, I try to do, yeah, sometime outside world ecosystem or, but it depends on the client and what's the ambition. So
Hmm.
if the ambition is to, yeah, to be competitive, an outside world map, the universe map, to try to figure out whose influence and how to be competitive will be relevant. Else, if it's more of a, we have to figure out the root cause of why we have a problem on with our processes. Yeah, service blueprint, Milky Way map will be more relevant. So.
Okay, cool. A couple of questions have come in. For the first one, from Martin. I'm new to EDGY. Are those maps dynamic? I'm thinking here of integration with BI dashboards and stuff like that.
They are not, at least not for me. I am using Miro, and to me, they are. It's working well for me because it's mostly workshop context. But there are some other tools. People are using Visio. I'm not sure of the name. At some point, there will be a Mural, FigJam board, but there are also these architecture software that I'm not familiar with because my background is design. But there's Qualiware that and Mega, I don't know the name, sorry.
Mega.
Uh, yeah, thanks. That are implementing EDGY, the language, and at some point, maybe the maps. So the map
Hmm.
are, like I said, fairly new because this is what I've been working on the last year. But we're in contact with, and when I say we, it's the intersection group, in contact with most of these software developer, and they are integrating EDGY. And maybe at some point, these maps will be a standard and people will use them. But it's still a bit of a work in progress, but it's one that have multiple case studies, and it's been shown, at least for me, that it's been working pretty great.
Cool. Another one. Is there any particular map or maps that you're finding most challenging for clients to engage with?
Uh, no, no, no. To me, it's not the map. It's probably, like I said, the level. It's kind of the same. When you are able to make it step by step and easy to use, and you try to remove as much information as possible, and to remove that cognitive overload for clients. Any map is manageable, I think, in the conversation. I think, and it was also my bias and my problem at some point is that I tend to arrive with all these complex map with 200 elements, and I spent I don't know 8, 10, 20 hours to build them, and then I show it to people, and I expect them to understand them in 30 seconds, which is not possible. So the level is the challenge, but the map, if you don't have a lot of things and there are clear arrows, any map is doable, I think.
Hmm? Another from Ian. Are you time bound to create maps or levels, or how long would you typically spend with a client? I find it challenging to time box activity like this, but our clients expect us to know and set expectations. So,
Yep.
do you have any
Uh,
like methodology to time box activities with customers?
it's also on the facilitation part. Usually, there's a couple of rules. So usually your workshop are max 3 hour long per session because afterward people are just tired. And usually I can go through all of these map on a high level in what, a day or two on so 16 hours, but it needs to be done in collaboration. And I'm just going to put that. I figured out a way to make it faster with the well, it's in French, jeu de société. So we play a game and they give me information, and then I go back in the background and just reconfigure a bit everything to complete all the other map based on the discussion. So they can be there for 3 hours. I can work for 20 and come back, and it makes sense to people. But it's only the high level that is addressed here. So if you want to do all these complex map, like I said, like the underwater pipes of Montreal, well, it takes the time it takes. it is what it is. But we also need, well, at least I acknowledge that they have a budget and a time frame, so I need to keep them informed and to make it good enough, not perfect, good enough. Um, if it's required to build something to go into space, they will need to be perfect, and it will take the time it take. But if it's just a conversation to figure out what's the best solution for our next, I don't know, communication strategy for the next quarter, good enough. You make it good enough.
Okay, cool. We have one last question before we log off. Is the idea of those maps that there are multiple editors? I'm thinking here that somebody might have insight into certain parts of the map, or somebody else or something else about the map. Is it one person that does the maps, or do you have multiple editors in the same one?
It depends. In my case, it's mostly workshops. So yeah, maybe sometime I will be the one like writing down stuff and putting the post-it on, and to be the one doing the moderation and the facilitation. But yeah, there are some clients that really like it and update them on their own. And at some point, I am just there to review a bit everything, but they are autonomous. And this is where we like, and this is how we prefer to do things, at least at In Friends, that to enable people to work with these maps, even if they're not perfect. But when I leave, they still have a sense of what to do and they understand how these things work. But yeah, multiple people, but it's always like syncing people that is the issue. It's not the map. It's if 5 people, 10 people need to update these maps, well, they need to take the time to understand the system. And this is where usually they don't take the time. So it can be done, but it needs to be agreed that everybody will put a bit of time to make it viable.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jean-Sébastien, for a really, really interesting journey for us. Thank you all for participating, and don't hesitate to take a look at what's coming next. Next, in a couple of weeks, we'll be looking more into the enterprise design, or enterprise scan, and how that can help us with fighting assumptions in projects and initiatives. So thank you so much, and until next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.